like you did when you made $3.35 an hour. That's our problem. We don't live within our means. So when it comes down to it, we're operating in a negative, and then we're telling God, you know what, if things get better, I'm going to give a little more. God, we start praying ridiculous prayers. God, if you do this for me, I promise I'm going to give. And what's God saying? Wait, you're going to give me what's already mine? Are you kidding me? And even if I gave you $1 million, you know what you're going to do with it? You're going to look like that first slide. You're going to have a white fur, a diamond cup, and a Rolls Royce. If you are not responsible with your money now, and I'm speaking especially to this younger group, you are not going to be responsible with your money in 20 years. You are not going to be responsible with your money 60 years from now. If you are just struggling now, nothing's going to change in 10 years. These are habits that you've made a part of you, and they're just going to continue on. And that's why it's so important to know what I really want to get across here is it's not the amount, it's the percentage. How much are you contributing? Not the dollar amount, but how much of what you have are you giving? I know a lot of people don't want to hear this. I fully understand that. We, at church, we will talk about anything but money. Absolutely anything. A couple weeks ago, about what was maybe a month ago, I came in here and I preached and I talked about superficial beauty and what we bought into. I looked around and I didn't see anyone going, wow, that's horrible. I can't believe that. And I know people are uncomfortable with this message today. Money is such a personal thing to us that we don't like to talk about it. We don't go for advice when we need it. We don't talk to our friends, our pastor, our community groups, people that we have in our lives to say, can someone help me? Because I'm making a mess of this. Money is the one thing. If you're having marriage problems, you'll confide in other people. If you're having trouble raising your kids, you'll go and ask for help. But money is such a taboo thing, we refuse to talk about it. And what did Jesus talk about more than anything else? Money. He knew that this was such a big problem for us because there's so many components to money. Money gives us control, or so we think. Money gives us power, or so we think. Money gives us independence, or so we think. But if we believe any of those things, we wouldn't be in debt. Who's got control when you're in debt? Visa, MasterCard, and the bank. That's who's in control. And that's why Jesus emphasizes, you cannot have two masters. It's either money or God. You can't do both. Because if you choose money, you're picking debt, you're picking credit cards, you're picking banks, you're picking all those things over God. And part of why we want to be in control of those things is so that we can honor God with what He's blessed us. He's given us money, He's given us homes, He's given us clothing, He's given us all these things, and we have an opportunity to give back to Him. Now, I'm not telling you, give X%. That's not what this is about. But I will challenge you with this. What you do give is a reflection of where you are spiritually. Anyone doesn't believe me? Open up your checkbook. Look at your bank statement. You want to know what's important in your life? Go through there. These are things that I deal with as well. So I'm not up here telling anyone you're wrong, you're doing this wrong. You guys need to get it together. This is something that I struggle with as well. When I open up my bank statement at the end of the month and I start looking through it, I know it was a priority for the month of May or June or whatever. Am I going forward or backward? January. I know it was a priority in January. All I have to do is look at my bank statement. And that's all you guys have to do. We all talk, I love God. God is everything in my life. Show yourself that. Open up your bank account and tell me what it says. Don't tell me, tell yourself what it says. Because if it says Visa, Regal Theaters, Chase Bank for car payment, mortgage, and then that last little line, $3, church. You've answered your own question. Now, I think the fourth point that Jesus is making here is, if we want to give truly, if we want to truly give, we give everything. I'm not talking strictly just money. I'm talking about our lives. I'm talking what we think about when we wake up in the morning, what we go to bed with, What happens all day long? Where we spend our time. Do we give everything? Is God the first thing on our minds? Is He the last thing on our minds? That's what He's saying. Just like this woman, and she gave me it all. You know, John Wesley had a really interesting story. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with John Wesley. Famous English preacher, and he authored a huge, if you love hymns, you have to know who John Wesley is. Him and his brother wrote an endless amount of hymns. They ended up founding the Methodist Church, so that makes a connection. John Wesley had gone out and bought some furniture and some paintings for his house. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, buying furniture, paintings, you want your home to be furnished well. There's nothing wrong with that. He was putting up these paintings, and all of a sudden there was a knock at his door, and it was the chambermaid. He opened up the door and saw her. She was standing there shivering. She had on this really thin, like, robe, and it was cold outside. And he said, where's your coat? She said, I'm too poor, I don't have one. Now John Wesley, being this man of God, great scholar, preacher, reaches in his pocket and realizes he just spent the last money he personally had on all these paintings. And he had nothing to offer this woman. This woman was freezing. She didn't have a coat while he was adorning his den with these beautiful paintings. There's nothing wrong with paintings. But he put himself in a position where he couldn't help someone in real need. At that moment, he made a vow that that would never happen in his life again. If we were to take, adjust for inflation and everything, what he made back then to the equivalent of today, he made $160,000 a year as a pastor. At that moment, he said, I will never, ever be in this position again. So he swore, made a promise, that he was going to live well below his means. He lived at a salary of what today's equivalent is $20,000 a year, and he gave away $140,000 a year. That's having the right perspective. That's having this perspective. When you say, because I've been so blessed, I want to bless other people. Now, we're not going to fix the world's problems, and I'm not under any delusion that we're going to be able to. But are we in the position to help one other person? Most of us are. What do we do when we're faced with that? If we put ourselves in a place where we're living way past our means, we can't help them because we're not even able to take care of ourselves and our own responsibilities. You know, just 2 more points and then we're going to be closing. 1 billion people in the world live on less than $1 a day. 2 billion live on less than $2 a day. Half of the world's population lives on less than $2 a day. You and I, now before I came here, I was at Starbucks. I bought myself a $4 coffee. Like I said, I'm not immune to this. I'm fully aware of areas in my life that I need to sacrifice so that I can put others first, so that I can help others. I want to challenge you guys. What can you do different in your lives? What can you do to give up what you have for someone else? Because ultimately, we always say, give generously, give generously, give generously. You know what Jesus says? Give sacrificially. Because if it doesn't hurt, if it's not a sacrifice, you're not really giving. And that ties into the ultimate form of giving. And that was Jesus himself. When he gave, he didn't hold back. When he gave, he didn't say, I need to have a little bit for later. He sacrificed, truly sacrificed everything. He gave up his place in heaven. He gave up wealth unimaginable. He gave up something that he had before time existed. He gave up all of that and made an ultimate sacrifice. So I want you guys to think, when you think of sacrifice, think of Jesus. When you think of giving, think of Jesus and see, am I at least moving in that direction? Am I living in a way that is demonstrating to Christ that I even have the tiniest understanding of what sacrifice really means. One more fact, and I'll close. In this country, people who make less than $40,000 a year give it the highest percentage. People who make over $120,000 a year, second highest. You know what's the lowest? Middle class. The middle class makes up the smallest amount of giving. I just found that really interesting because that's where most of us live. Most of us would consider ourselves someplace in the middle class. And that percentage is lower than what the wealthiest give. The wealthiest give 2% of their income. Middle class is less than that. Jesus looks for the percentage that you give, not the amount. He wants to know, what are you giving up for him? Heavenly Father, we know that money is merely a tool. It is not good, nor is it evil. It's a neutral thing. But I ask, Father, that for me and for everyone here, that you help us in how we are motivated and our intentions when we view and use money. Help us to have a heart that is sacrificial. Help us to make changes in our life to demonstrate that we know that Christ sacrificed for us. Help us to have an attitude of giving that is joyful, generous, and obedient. Father, help us to love you more. Help us to care for one another more. Help us to fulfill your two great commandments. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.